Shera 7, the Sprinkle Sprinkle woman, is one of the most emotionally disciplined women on the internet today, and I dare say this is why she's successful as a content creator. Many people like to attribute her success to her message. I don't doubt that, but I think otherwise because something happened around 2023, 2024 that proves that she knows how to control her emotions, and that's something we can all learn from her because she uses it strategically, and there's psychological reasoning that proves that what she does, the way she goes about it works. So, we will discuss how to use emotional discipline to your advantage. Make sure you stick around because you will learn a lot from this video. And if this is your first time here, hi, I'm Jay. Welcome to She Upgraded. I like to break down the strategies used by successful women, both past and present, and the rationale behind their thinking and how we can harness it by learning what works and mistakes to avoid while becoming the women we intend to be. You can hit the like button if you've learned anything or if you want it to get to the right people as it should, and make sure you subscribe if this is your place. Before we move forward, we need to go back a little. A few years ago, in 2023, the internet came for Shera 7 and it was insane. A lot of YouTubers and TikTokers made videos about her. Many were criticizing her, especially her message of look out for the money first. People whose values differs from her were irritated by the message. I remember some YouTubers saying that she was dangerous to the feminine energy community. And every time a woman will make a mistake, especially an influencer who is perceived to behave or move like Shera, Shera will be blamed for it. But while all of those was happening, she gained 20 billion TikTok views. Not from her own videos, but videos, clips that were made by other people about her. Now, I need you to fact check that. Think about this. Because the question here is not whether or not you agree with what Shera teaches, but rather, it's why didn't the attack, the criticism stop her? Instead, it made her more successful as a content creator. Later, we'll highlight some of the successes she got from all of this. Disclaimer, this video is not about whether her message is morally right or not, whether you agree with her message. We are only going to focus on emotional discipline and we can learn from it. But notwithstanding, do you think Shera is someone who is strategic or she's just an entertainer? I would like to hear what you think. While people were busy making videos trying to argue either for or against Shera, she just kept growing. Imagine the amount of views she amassed. That's free advertisement. So the people who wanted to stop her were actually making her more popular. Every "here is why Shera is wrong" video was actually increasing her audience. There is a psychological term called the amplification paradox. When you attack someone who refuses to shrink, it doesn't harm their reach. Instead, it enables it. People like to pay attention to conflicts. That's why news about war, that's why best friends splitting up, arguments, and all those things trend. People follow stories like that. But in the midst of the conflict, if one party refuses to engage, it feels odd, and people can easily spot it. So what is odd in Shera's case was that she completely removed herself from the fight. She wasn't fighting who is making videos about her. She wasn't fighting the content creators. She was not even mentioning their names in her videos. She was very unbothered. Let's bring this back to you. So think about when someone tried to get into a fight with you. And I don't mean physical. I mean trying to say things about you that isn't true. You most likely jumped into responding because in your mind, you are setting the record straight. I understand that sometimes it feels like the logical thing to do, but when you explain yourself or when you get into a fight with people who are behaving in such ways that are despicable, one, you give them permission to contribute their opinion. Two, you're reducing yourself down to their level. It will always work against you when you engage with the controversy because people are not trying to understand you. People are not trying to see your own side of the story as a person. They're only trying to prove that you're not any different or any better than they are. See, one thing emotionally disciplined women understand is the power of consistency. And I'm not saying consistency in doing something, which is also good. But here I'm referring to consistency in character. In January 2024, the controversy was at its peak. The articles were still trending, everyone was talking, but guess what? A luxury accessory brand reached out to Shera. Shera was in their Valentine's Day campaign. Now think about it. A luxury brand deliberately associating themselves with the most debated woman on the internet. Of course, at that time. Listen, there's something smart and successful brands understand that people don't. Consistency is more respected than being liked. Obviously, the majority were against her content, so it wasn't like she was liked. She was predictable, and I don't mean that she didn't move in silence. I mean predictable in such a way that her message was predictable. She still is the same Shira, same tune, same energy. Everyone is clear on where Shira stands, regardless of your feelings. Despite the attacks on her and also the attempt to reshape her narrative, she remained herself. Now, this is the kind of steadiness that attracts rare and life changing opportunities. This is the same with women who know how to control their emotions. Their character is consistent, is not fluctuating, except in situations where they deliberately do so for whatever reasons they might have. Think about this. When you hear certain women's name, I mean famous women, they usually remind you of certain words or phrases. When you hear Cleopatra, you think of dark feminine energy. When you hear Marilyn, you think of seduction. When you hear Michelle Obama, you think of influence. When you hear Candice Owens, you think of fearlessness. Do you think everyone like these women I've just mentioned? They had people and they still have people who do not like them, but that did not and that does not break them just because of the rumors. There is no confusion about who they are. And this is why emotionally disciplined women that are popular, they tend to have a very solid community or fan base. So back to you. If you always switch character, this is not the same as learning and evolving. That's a different thing. So when people don't just get it when it comes to you, you're communicating that you cannot be trusted. Listen, people will choose a bad message over one that is often changing. It's part of human nature to want to believe in something, to want to stand for something. Even as a business owner or an employer, when it's hard for people to understand what your vision is, you won't have their support. And this is what happens when you cannot regulate your emotions because you want to do right by everybody, even when that's not who you are or that's not what you stand for. You end up struggling to be yourself, and that creates the confusion you do not want. There is a misconception about emotionally disciplined women. Emotionally disciplined women are not cold. There are two terms I've seen people mix up: emotional discipline and emotional suppression. Now, suppression is when you force yourself not to react, but internally you're falling apart. You put a smile on the outside, but only God knows what is happening in your inside. Now, when you suppress your emotions, you are only performing and it won't last. Performance always break, and many times it will break when you least expect it. What emotionally disciplined women do instead of suppressing their emotions is they deliberately pay attention to their emotions, no pretense, and then they deal with it accordingly without letting their emotions take the driver's seat in their life. So they are fully aware of their environment and they decide what gets their energy and what doesn't. It's called selective attention. Go watch the video that I did on it. It's not about ignoring everything, but you have to be strategic about what gets you and what gets your attention. If you pay attention to how psychologically disciplined women respond, you will see similarities. For instance, when all that was going on for Shera, she didn't release a video apologizing for what she stands for or a video saying, let me address this. All that isn't necessary except you're covering a story or you're covering an incident that requires your information to be accurate. But if that's not the case, if you're being accused of something terrible and it's character defamation, yes, you can go ahead. But if it's just mere rumors and just people trying to be people, you don't need all of that. Also, notice how this type of women do not take breaks or run away from rumors. I mean, they don't shy away from the controversy. Shera didn't shrink. She didn't disappear. Instead, she stayed focused. She even increased her online presence. And I think it was about that time she got on TikTok. Imagine if she had disappeared because she was scared or because she didn't have that confidence to carry on with her message. If there are any breaks, not because of rumors, but just for better positioning. Now, when people start talking negative things about you, especially when the negativity spreads, that's not the time for you to let them walk over you. You don't need to suppress your emotions. Instead, Take all that energy and pour it into fueling yourself to succeed. Emotionally disciplined women understand the power a calm woman possesses. That's why calm women always win. Now, people are most unsettled by people they cannot read. People like it when they can predict the outcome. That is why, like we discussed earlier, they will stand 10 toes down for you if your message is predictable and they agree with it. But they will try to tear you down if it's the otherwise. A woman who can stay away from drama, a woman who breaks the pattern, that absence of expected response creates something discomforting in many people. It brings out the demon in them. It really does annoy them because they know that you cannot be controlled. They know that you are calm, you're collected. And I don't just mean your personality. Of course, that matters too. But you can be someone who is bubbly and still calm when it comes to your emotions. No, you do not have to be the crazy woman always fighting everybody. Even when you do not fight or engage in drama, it won't stop them because people like to see how far you can keep up with being the bigger person. So expect them to continue to push as long as they can. Your composure, or do I say your ability to stay calm in the midst of chaos, is not just for the sake of inner peace, which is the most important thing, don't get me wrong, but also it's a social signal that communicates to other people that you do not need their approval. You do not need their validation to know your worth and act as such. No argument, no clapbacks, no reaction videos shows maturity and grownness as much as knowing how to be a calm woman, especially when people desperately need to see you react. So, what are your thoughts about Shera's reaction? And I would like to know any other famous woman you consider to be emotionally disciplined. It doesn't have to be one who has never fallen for the trap. It just has to be someone who has, for the most part, stayed consistent with controlling their emotions. I would like to know. See you in the comment.